The architecture of extraction, the exploitation tactics of digital platforms, and the degradation of material reality, by Kevin David Mayo II. Eerie Life, Health, and Surety. Power to the people. Forward. This book began as a simple conversation about why things feel broken in society. Not just one thing, but everything. Why do appliances that cost more break faster? Why do we pay subscriptions for software that we used to own? Why do local restaurants struggle while delivery platforms profit? Why are our phones simultaneously more powerful and less useful? Why does food engineered in laboratories leave us hungrier than home-cooked meals? These aren't separate problems. They're symptoms of a larger systemic transformation, the architecture of extraction. Over the past 2 decades, platform monopolies have inserted themselves as middlemen across every sector of economic and social life. They've converted ownership into access, stability into precarity, and communities into atomized consumers. They've applied the subscription model to everything, from software to housing, ensuring that nothing can be owned, only rented. They've engineered products, from washing machines to chicken nuggets, to fail faster, cost more to repair, and to keep us dependent on continuous replacement. And they've consistently sold us this degradation as progress. This book traces how we got here, and more importantly, what we can do about it. The systems of extraction are here, operational, and expanding, but they're not inevitable. They're policy choices, and we can make different ones. Who this book is for? This book is for the creative individuals in this world who are trying to make their voice heard by a system that only listens to respond. A system that only listens to extract from you rather than to understand you. Don't be fooled. Although these structures of extraction are here and crushing the regular person, I'm here to tell you, we're privy to the game now. We understand it. And understanding means we can choose. We can either continue playing the game the way they designed it, or we can design our own game and take control. This is for the person who knows they're getting extracted from, but continues to get up in the morning to provide for their families, to see the people that they love and they care about, and to make a difference in the world, despite knowing the truth behind it all, or at least having an inkling feeling that something's wrong. Don't give up. Keep fighting. Keep learning. Keep enriching yourselves. And never, ever behave. Part 1. The Systems of Extraction. Chapter 1. The Endpoint. A Vision of 2035. Picture this. A broom closet in 2035. You wake up on a mattress that occupies the entire floor space of your 80 square foot rental, $1,800 per month, utilities not included. Your VR headset sits charging on the only shelf, its battery depleted from last night's session in the metaverse where your digital apartment has 3 bedrooms in view whenever you're running on your VR treadmill. You swipe through 17 advertisements to access your meal delivery app. The first 3 ads are dynamic, algorithmically selected based on your biometric data, showing mild dehydration and elevated cortisol. You order a protein shake engineered by food scientists for maximum profit margins and minimum nutritional value. The blend of ultra-processed ingredients hits every bliss point in your brain's reward center while delivering minimal satiety, ensuring that you'll order again in 3 hours. A driver from 3 towns over receives your order notification. He drives to your city because the algorithm determined that he'd accept a lower per mile rate. The platform extracts its 35% commission from the restaurant, plus fees from you, plus data about your ordering patterns, payment methods, and price sensitivity. And the money leaves your community forever, flowing to corporate headquarters in San Francisco. You put on your you put on your headset because 80 square feet feels bigger in virtual reality. Your digital landlord's algorithmic property management system notices that your rent payment is 12 hours late. You were paid yesterday, but the deposit takes 2 business days to clear. The system automatically files eviction paperwork. There's no human call, no landlord to explain your situation to, no possibility of forbearance or understanding, just an AI that has calculated that you're no longer profitable enough to house, and a legal process set in motion by a mathematical function. This isn't science fiction. This is the logical endpoint of every trend currently reshaping our economy, and we're building it one convenience at a time. Chapter 2. Platform monopolies as gatekeepers. The foundation of modern extraction began with a simple innovation: digital distribution. The elimination of physical media and retail infrastructure promised convenience and democratization. What it delivered was unprecedented centralization of power and systematic rent-seeking at scale. The first movers win everything. In 2003, if you wanted PC games, you had 2 options: download them directly from developers, often cumbersome and unreliable, or purchase them on CD-ROM from retail stores. Steam emerged that September as the first comprehensive digital distribution platform, initially designed simply to update Valve's own games like Counter-Strike and Half-Life 2. But Valve recognized the broader opportunity: create the infrastructure for game distribution, and everyone would have to use it. And because they were first, they won. By the time competitors realized that digital distribution represented the future of software sales, Steam had already established an unassailable position through network effects. Gamers congregated where the games were available. Publishers distributed where the games were. Each new game added to the platform made it more attractive to users. Each new user made it more attractive to publishers. This self-reinforcing cycle created a de facto monopoly that persists 2 decades later. Today, Steam, Google Play, and Apple's App Store collectively control access to billions of users and extract percentage-based commissions from trillions of dollars in cumulative transactions. Their fee structures reveal the raw mathematics of platform power. Steam takes 30% commission on the first $10 million per game sale. 25% revenue between the next 10 million to 50 million, and 20% on revenue exceeding $50 million. While this tiered structure appears to reward success, it still represents massive extraction. A game that sells $100 million pays $23 million in fees to Steam simply for hosting the files and processing payments. Apple's App Store. They take 30% standard commission, dropping to 15% only for small businesses earning under $1 million annually, or for subscriptions after the first year. For a small independent developer earning $50,000 from their app, Apple takes $15,000, nearly a third of their revenue, for providing hosting and payment processing that costs Apple pennies per transaction. Google Play operates with similar commission structures, though it has slightly more competitive pressure from Android's allowance of alternative app stores, albeit with significant friction and security warnings. The flat tax problem. These commission structures are flat taxes. The same models that progressive voters have opposed in mainstream fiscal policy for generation. A flat tax doesn't necessarily scale with the ability to pay. It extracts a fixed percentage regardless of profit margins, developmental cost, or financial circumstances. Consider two developers. An independent creator spending $40,000 and 2 years developing an app that earns $50,000 in its first year nets $35,000 after the 30% platform tax. Barely enough to recoup costs and survive. Meanwhile, a large studio spending $2 million to develop a game that earns $20 million earns $14 million after the same 30% tax. More than enough for massive profits and expansion. The platform fee is neutral to its own costs. Hosting a small app versus a large game costs roughly the same. But it's regressive within its own impact, as it takes proportionally more from those who are least able to afford it, while barely denting the profits of major publishers. Yet in the digital realm, we've accepted this techno-feudalism as normal, even inevitable. The iTunes model, ownership as an illusion. Apple's platform power extends beyond app distribution into media itself. The iTunes Store, launched in 2003, the same year as Steam, established the model for digital media extraction years before streaming became dominant. It created walled gardens where users believed that they owned music and movies, but in reality, they only possessed revocable licenses. When you purchase a movie on iTunes or Amazon Prime, you don't own it in any meaningful sense. The platform can remove it from your library when the licensing agreements expire, when content becomes controversial, or when corporate strategies shift. Your library is just a collection of temporary permissions that can be revoked without compensation, prior notice, or appeal. This situation became visible in 2023 when Sony removed purchase discovery content from PlayStation users' library, and when Apple removed films and TV shows purchased through iTunes when distribution rights changed hands. Users who thought they'd bought permanent access discovered that they merely rented contingent permission. The platforms offered neither refunds nor apologies. Terms of service have always made clear that purchase meant license, even if interface deliberately used language suggesting ownership. And that, kids, is why I promote piracy. The media control spiral. By the way, I'm just joking. I don't promote piracy. The pattern of increasing control media extends far beyond digital platforms. It represents a decades-long trajectory of industries desperately trying to prevent copying while maximizing extraction, with each technological generation bringing new mechanisms of control. VHS tapes, 1970s to 1990s. Those were produced with macrovision copy protection, analog signal manipulation that disrupted recording to other VHS discs. The technology was imperfect and easily circumvented by those with modest technical knowledge, but it established the principle that copying purchased media was theft rather than fair use. The DVDs, the 1990s to the 2000s. Those introduced the content scramble system, or CSS encryption. The film industry claimed unbreakable digital protection would prevent privacy. Within 3 years, the DCSS software circulated freely online and DVD copying became trivial. The industry's response wasn't to accept that information wants to be free. It was to escalate through legislation. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1998 made circumventing copy protection illegal, even for fair use purposes, effectively criminalizing actions that had been legal for VHS tapes. Blu-ray discs, the 2000s to 2010s, employed Advanced Access Content Systems, or AACS, encryption plus massive file sizes, 25 to 50 gigabytes for disk, where the strategy here was twofold. Make encryption more sophisticated and make piracy prohibitively expensive in terms of storage. In 2000, 50 gigabytes of storage cost approximately $500. The industry bet that even if encryption was broken, pirates couldn't afford to store copied films. But data storage collapsed exponentially. By 2010, 50 gigabytes cost under $5. By 2020, it cost under $1. By 2025, pennies. The economic barrier evaporated, and AACS's encryption was broken within months of Blu-ray's launch. And then that takes us to the streaming area, the 2010s to the present. Streaming represents the industry's ultimate solution to the copying problem. You can't copy what you never possess. Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and others deliver content that only exists temporarily in your device's cache, encrypted and automatically deleted. You can't archive what you don't control. You can't build a personal library when everything is rented by the month. Each evolution was marketed as progress, better quality, more convenience, greater selections, and in reality, each step stripped away more ownership and autonomy. The technology to deliver high-quality video has existed for decades. What changed wasn't capability, but control. Audio's parallel trajectory. The same pattern unfolded with audio formats. Vinyl records from the 1950s to the 1980s were difficult to copy without substantial equipment and expertise. The barrier wasn't legal or technological protection, but practical difficulty. Cassette tapes, 1970s to the 1990s. Cassette tapes made copying trivial. Anyone with 2 tape decks could record duplicate albums. The industry panicked, declaring that home taping is killing music. Demonstrably false. Music sales grew throughout the cassette era. But they couldn't ever prevent copying without abandoning the cassette format entirely. Compact discs, 1980s to 2000s, initially had no copyright protection, making perfect digital copies easy. The industry added various protection schemes in the early 2000s, some so aggressive that they installed rootkits on users' computers. The Sony BMG copy protection scandal of 2005. Public backlash forced retreat, but the intent was clear. Control trumpeted consumer rights. Digital downloads, the 2000s to the 2010s. Via iTunes and Amazon, Digital downloads use digital rights management or DRM to restrict copying and device compatibility. Apple eventually dropped DRM for music 2009 under pressure from record labels who wanted compatibility with non-Apple devices, but the infrastructure for control remained. Streaming, 2010s to present, via Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube Music. Streaming has become the dominant model. Users own nothing, rent everything, and must maintain subscriptions or lose access to their entire library. The fidelity myth. Each format change was justified by claims of quality improvement, but this was largely just marketing. Audio fidelity was essentially solved in the 1930s with high-quality analog recording and perfected to beyond human perception limits by the compact disc era in the 1980s. CDs deliver 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz audio, sufficient to reproduce frequencies from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, the full range of human hearing, with signal-to-noise ratio exceeding 90 decibels beyond the dynamic range of human perception. High-fidelity streaming services like Tidal claiming superior sound quality through 24-bit 192 kilohertz audio are marketing the audiophiles, but not delivering perceptible improvements for the vast majority of listeners. What has changed across formats wasn't audio quality, it was control. Industries will always choose rent-seeking activity over ownership and extraction over service because selling a product once generates finite revenue, while renting access generates infinite revenue streams. Chapter 3. The gig economy wealth drain. The platform model didn't stop at digital media and software. It expanded aggressively into physical services, creating what proponents called the sharing economy, but which should more accurately be termed the extraction economy. By inserting themselves as intermediaries between service providers and consumers, these platforms fundamentally altered the flow of money through communities, converting local economic circulation into unidirectional extraction to distant corporate headquarters. The mathematics of community bleeding. DoorDash and Uber Eats represent paradigmatic examples of gig economy extraction. These platforms typically charge restaurants 15 to 30% commission, but when all the fees are included, payment processing fees 2 to 3%, marketing fees an additional 5 to 15%, delivery cost, and mandatory promotional discounts, total platform extraction often exceeds 40% per transaction. To understand the community impact alone, consider a concrete example. Kevin lives in Sandusky, Ohio, and orders Wendy's through DoorDash after a long workday. The meal costs $25. Here's where the money flows. $8.75 to $10, or 35 to 40%, goes to DoorDash commission and fees, flowing to corporate headquarters in San Francisco. A $3 to $5 tip goes to a driver who lives in Huron, 15 miles away, and drives to Sandusky for delivery. A $2 payment processing fee flowing to major payment processors, and a $9 to $11 fee, 36 to 44%, actual payment to the Wendy's franchise. Of that $25, only $9 to $10 stays in Sandusky's economy. The franchise is likely locally owned, but corporately franchised, with it, which means additional extraction, and staffed by minimum wage workers from surrounding towns, Castalia, Milan, and a couple kids from Sandusky maybe. This is just one transaction. Multiply this by thousands of daily transactions across Sandusky and tens of thousands across similarly sized cities nationwide, and you have this systematic hemorrhaging of wealth from local economies to distant corporate centers. The multiplier effect. In traditional economies, money spent locally circulates through the community, creating what economists call the multiplier effect. Each dollar spent generates additional economic activity as it changes hands. Traditional local purchase. Kevin walks to a local restaurant, or the restaurant delivers directly. $25 goes to the restaurant, 100%. The restaurant pays local employees who shop at local businesses. Those businesses pay local employees who patronize other local businesses. And each dollar might generate $1.50 to $2 in total economic activity through the circulation. Platform mediated purchase. Kevin orders through DoorDash. $10 to $11 goes to the restaurant, 40 to 44%. $3 to $5 goes to a non-local driver. $9 to $14 goes to platform and processors. And local economic multiplier approaches zero. Scale this across all commerce, food delivery, ride sharing, online retail replacing local shops, and you have the systematic hollowing out of local economies replaced by extraction flows to distant corporate centers. Buy local becomes meaningless. The cruel irony is that consumers often believe that they're supporting local businesses by ordering from local restaurants through delivery platforms. I'm buying Cheeks Burgers downtown. They think I'm supporting local business. But when the platform takes 40% and the driver is from out of town, the local business receives only a fraction of what it would have from a direct order or a dine-in customer. Buying local becomes meaningless when the platform extracts the value. You're sending money out to your community while virtue signaling that you want to keep the money in your community. If you actually want to support local businesses, don't use DoorDash, especially when those businesses offer their own delivery services or within walking distance. The platform adds no real value. It simply asserts itself as a tax on convenience. Data, the secondary extraction. Beyond the financial extraction lies something potentially more valuable: data extraction. When you order through platforms, the restaurant gets your money minus commission, but the platform gets your data and keeps it exclusively. The platform knows exactly what food you prefer and in what combinations, when you're most likely to order, day of the week, time of day, and the weather conditions, how price sensitive you are, whether you wait for promotions, how much money is likely in your account based on ordering frequency and patterns, how close to broke you're willing to go before stopping orders, how much you typically tip and under what circumstances, and your location history and movement patterns. The restaurant that actually prepared your food, they know almost nothing about you. Maybe your name and your phone number if the platform shares that much. and oftentimes it doesn't. All the valuable behavioral and preference data remains locked away in the platform's proprietary databases. The platform uses this data to optimize extraction. Dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing increases fees when you're most likely to be desperate. Bad weather, late night, weekend peak times. Algorithmic promotion. That pushes higher margin items and adds extras with friction-free interfaces that makes the price comparison difficult. Personalized marketing. Personalized marketing hits you with targeted ads precisely when historical data suggests that you're most likely to order. Price discrimination. Price discrimination charges different users different amounts based on calculated willingness and ability to pay. And all these things just mean one thing. They want to extract the maximum amount from you while providing you with the bare fucking minimum in return. This isn't cynicism or exaggeration. It's the explicit business model. Maximum extraction, minimum cost. The banality of systematic harm. There's a profound banality to this evil. No one signs up to drive for DoorDash thinking, I'm going to help extract wealth from struggling communities. No one orders dinners through an app thinking, I'm going to contribute to the systematic hollowing of local economies. No individual actor is malicious. They're responding rationally to immediate incentives. The driver needs flexible work and sees an opportunity to make money. The consumer is tired after a long day and wants convenience. The restaurant owner faces declining foot traffic and sees the platform as a necessity to reach customers. Nobody is deliberately causing harm. But the system itself is structured to bleed communities dry. Evil, in this context, doesn't require malice. It requires only inaction and lack of thought. The willingness to participate in extraction because the immediate personal incentive, a few dollars for delivery, convenience for a meal, obscures the systemic damage. Hannah Arendt's concept of the banality of evil appears here. Ordinary people committing extraordinary harm, not through sadism or ideology, but through the unreflective participation in harmful systems. Each actor only sees their individual transactions rather than the aggregate pattern they're a part of. Beyond food delivery. The same extraction model extends far beyond food delivery. Ride sharing. Uber and Lyft, those take 25 to 40% from drivers who provide their own vehicles, insurance, maintenance, and labor, while extracting data about travel patterns, surge pricing opportunities, and user price sensitivity. Short-term rentals, Airbnb, Vrbo, those extract fees from both renters and property owners while converting long-term housing stock into tourist accommodations, driving up local housing costs and reducing availability for residents. Freelance platforms, Upwork, Fiverr. Those take 20% from freelancers who provide all their own equipment, workspace, expertise, while the platform provides only connection and extensive surveillance. creative tools. Adobe Creative Cloud, Microsoft 365, Mixcraft Acoustica, Pro Tools. Those converted one-time software purchases into monthly subscription rent-seeking. You don't own Photoshop anymore. You rent monthly access. And the moment your payment stops, your ability to create or even access your own project files disappears in some cases. Each platform inserts itself as an intermediary, establishing a monopoly or near monopoly position through the network effects and capital advantages, and then gradually increases extraction as users become dependent and alternatives disappear. Chapter 4. Tech stagnation and false innovation. While platforms extracted ever-increasing rents and technological innovation has largely stalled, for all the rhetoric about disruption and innovation, consumer technology has only primarily incrementally improved, and those improvements are disguised as revolutionary breakthroughs. They've been that way since 2012. The iPhone 5 plateau. The iPhone 5, released in September 2012, established the basic form factor and the functionality that all smartphones still follow 13 years later. 4-inch touchscreen, rectangular candy bar form, and front and rear cameras, mobile internet, app ecosystem, GPS, accelerometer, and voice assistant. These core features were presented in 2012 and remain essentially unchanged in 2025. Since then, we've only received incremental updates marketed as breakthroughs. Screens got bigger from 4 inches to 6+ inches. But now many users find phones uncomfortably large and difficult to use one-handed. We've exceeded the optimal form factor for human hands, but manufacturers need something to sell. So phones kept growing until they approached the physical limitations of pocket portable devices. Cameras got bigger. Marketing emphasized megapixel counts, now routinely exceeding 100 megapixels. But this is mostly meaningless. A 108 megapixel camera sensor paired with a mediocre lens just increases the blur. Resolution is meaningless without optical quality, and phone cameras are fundamentally limited by physics. The small sensor size and the short focal length dictated by thin device form factor. Perceptual image quality was functionally solved decades ago with film photography. The constraint isn't sensor technology, it's geometry. You can't cheat the relationship between lens size, sensor size, and image quality. Professional photographers still use large cameras with large sensors and large lenses because the physics demand it. Storage increase from 16 gigabytes to 1 terabyte. This is genuinely useful but hardly revolutionary. Storage capacity has increased predictably along known technology curves for decades. Processors got faster, following Moore's law until physical limitations began imposing constraints around 2015 to 2020. Speed improvements now come primarily from architecture and efficiency rather than raw transistor count increases. Batteries got slightly better. Energy density has improved perhaps 30 to 40% in 13 years, the slowest moving major component, because battery chemistry is hard. Most battery life improvements come from the more efficient processors and software optimization rather than better batteries. The death of hardware diversity. Before 2012, consumer electronics exhibited genuine diversity. Phones came in varied form factors with different interaction models. Sony Ericsson models with distinctive translucent aesthetics and physical camera buttons. The Nokia's Samsung Juke with the unique rotating design. LG phones with slide-out physical keyboards. Modular phone like the Fairphone, Google's Project Era, that let users swap batteries, upgrade storage with SD cards, and replace broken components without voiding warranties. And phones with personality, different colors, textures, button arrangements, and interaction paradigms. The iPhone killed all this diversity. After 2012, the candy bar touchscreen format dominated overwhelmingly. Customization died. Repairability disappeared. Phones transitioned from being modifiable devices that users could repair and upgrade to sealed units that literally can't be opened without specialized tools and almost always void warranties. Modern phones have no removable batteries, forcing complete device replacement when the batteries degrade, typically within 2 to 3 years. No expandable storage, forcing users to buy more expensive models up front rather than upgrading storage as needed. No headphone jacks, forcing the purchase of proprietary wireless earbuds, which also have non-replaceable batteries, and serialized components, making authorized repairs difficult because parts are often crypto-locked to specific device serial numbers. Manufacturers are often and actively working to remove charging ports entirely, not because wireless charging is superior, it's less efficient, slower, and generates more heat, but because the charging port represents the last easily accessible physical interface to the device's internals. Remove it, and users are completely locked out of any hardware access whatsoever. Every change restricts user agency and locks us deeper into manufacturer control. This isn't paranoia. It's documented strategy exposed through the right to repair legislation battles, where internal corporate documents reveal deliberate design choices to prevent independent repair and third-party modification. The false prophets of innovation. Desperate to create the next big thing and justify continued growth, tech companies have pursued various dead ends. Folding phones, the Samsung Galaxy Fold and the Motorola Razr. Expensive, $1,500 to $2,000. Fragile, screens crease and sometimes break, and they serve niche market. They're not revolutionary. They're a solution to a self-created problem. Phones got too big for pockets or one-hand use. Sales remain minimal despite years on the market. VR and AR headsets, MetaQuest, PlayStation VR, and Apple Vision Pro. Those were promised as the future of computing for over a decade. They remain niche devices for gaming and specialized professional uses. Adoption has been minimal, and the technology works, but it lacks compelling use case for most people. The Apple Vision Pro perfectly encapsulates modern tech stagnation. At $3,500, it's technically impressive. High-resolution displays, sophisticated eye tracking, and powerful processors, but it's fundamentally misguided. Augmented reality glasses costing under $500, Ray-Ban's Meta, accomplish most of what average users want. Contextual information, navigational assistance, hands-free communication. But Apple needed to win the premium positioning contest rather than solve actual problems that most people have. Cryptos and NFT. Those promised decentralization and democratization, but delivered speculation bubbles, environmental damage from proof of work mining, and scams at industrial scale. After over a decade, mainstream adoption never materialized beyond speculation. And ironically, centralized cryptocurrency exchanges that reconstruct traditional financial intermediaries. AI assistants. Present since Siri launched in 2011, they've improved, but they're frustratingly limited for most daily use cases. After 13 years and billions in investments, voice assistants still routinely misunderstands requests, provide irrelevant information, or just simply fails. The technology works in constrained domains, but struggles with open-ended natural interaction. The AI assistant that actually works remains perpetually 5 to 10 years in the future. What AR and VR should be. The real opportunity for augmented reality isn't immersive virtual worlds. It's practical heads-up displays for daily life. Navigation. Arrows overlaid on actual streets showing where to turn, eliminating the need to look down at phone screens while walking or driving. Translation. Real-time translation of signs, menus, and text in foreign languages. Contextual information. Looking at a restaurant and seeing hours, reviews, menu, and wait times without pulling out a phone. Instructional overlays. Step-by-step repair instructions projected onto machinery as you're fixing them. And accessibility. Real-time captioning for deaf individuals, object recognition, and description for blind users. This is what Google Glass attempted before poor execution and privacy concerns killed it. This is what every science fiction vision shows. Not full VR isolation in their fake world crap, but useful information layered onto reality that enhances physical experience rather than replacing it. Instead, companies chase immersive VR worlds, trying to recreate Ready Player One's Oasis or Black Mirror's Striking Vipers, when most people just want help getting to the grocery store without staring at their phones while driving. The technology that could augment daily life often gets ignored in favor of escape pods from increasingly degraded material reality. Chapter 5. The console disruption and mobile's tipping point. While most consumer tech stagnated, one genuine disruption approaches. Mobile gaming is positioned to severely disrupt, if not destroy, the traditional console market. This transformation illustrates how platform control and gatekeeping can delay inevitable technological shifts when those shifts threaten existing revenue streams. The technical reality. Mobile devices have possessed sufficient processing power to rival last generation consoles for several years. The iPhone 15 Pro's A17 chip, the iPhone 15 Pro's A17 chip benchmarks competitively with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One's performance metrics. Mid-range Android phones with Snapdragon Series 8 processors approach similar capabilities. This hardware has already been here for years. The barrier wasn't technical capability, it was the experience gap. Gaming on phones historically meant poor controls, touchscreen, virtual buttons that lacked the precision and tactile feel and feedback of physical controllers. Thermal throttling. Sustained gaming causes phones to overheat, and that reduces performance. Battery drain. Intensive games empty batteries in 2 to 3 short hours. Small screens, difficult to see detailed game environments, and a social stigma. Real gamers use consoles or PCs rather than just a fucking phone. But these barriers are rapidly dissolving, closing the experience gap. Controllers for phones are normalizing. Devices like the Backbone One or Razer Kishi turns phones into handheld gaming devices with proper controls, analog sticks, face buttons, shoulder buttons, and ergonomic grips that rival Nintendo Switch or Steam Deck. Sales of mobile gaming equipment grew 340% from 2020 to 2023. Thermal management has improved. Phone manufacturers now include vapor chamber cooling, graphene heat spreaders, and software that manages sustained performance to prevent throttling during gaming sessions. Battery technology has advanced. Fast charging 0 to 80% in 30 minutes, and larger batteries, 5,000 milliamp hours, become the standard, reduce the friction of battery limitation. Not that great. Screen size increased. 6.5 to 7-inch phones provide gaming experiences approaching handheld consoles like the Steam Deck, 7 inches, or the Nintendo Switch, 6.2 inches. Cross-platform play expanded. Games like Fortnite, Call of Duty Mobile, and Apex Legends and Genshin Impact offer play across mobile, console, and PC, breaking down segregation between platforms. When mobile players can compete with console players, the distinction begins to dissolve. Cloud gaming has matured. Services like Xbox Cloud Gaming, GeForce Now, and PlayStation Plus streaming reduce the need for local processing power. The phone has merely become a screen and a controller for games running in distant data centers. Hardware limitations have become irrelevant when processing power happens remotely. The economic question. The question becomes stark for console manufacturers. Why would a casual or moderate gamer buy a $500 console when their phone delivers comparable experiences? Consider that the typical casual gamer already owns a $800 to $1,200 smartphone. It's a necessity for daily life. They already pay $50 to $100 a month for a cellular service. I mean, why the fuck would I pay for Xbox Live? Plays games occasionally. I think most people only play games for about 5 to 10 hours a week. Plays popular multiplayer titles, Fortnite, Call of Duty, Apex, GTA, rather than exclusive AAA story games. And that values convenience over maximum graphical fidelity. For this user, a console represents a $500 additional hardware cost, another device to maintain, update, and find space for. Games that cost $70 each. This represents the inability to play while commuting, traveling, or during breaks at work, and this requires TV access, potential conflict with family members. Meanwhile, their phone already purchased for other purposes, that's a sunk cost. Portable, it can be played anywhere with headphones silently. Many games are free to play with optional purchases, like all the ones above that I mentioned that everyone wants to play anyways. They double as communication, media, and productivity devices, and the phones are always with them. The hardcore gaming market will likely persist. People who want maximum performance, massive screens, immersive audio setups, and exclusive titles will continue buying consoles and gaming PCs. But the casual market, the vast majority of console sales, is ripe for migration to mobile. Industry recognition and response. Console manufacturers absolutely recognize this threat, evidenced by their strategic shifts. Nintendo focuses obsessively on unique form factors, Switch's hybrid handheld and dock design, and exclusive first-party titles, Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, that cannot be replicated anywhere else. They're not competing on raw power, they're competing on experience and exclusivity. Xbox pushes Game Pass everywhere, consoles, PC, cloud, mobile, because Microsoft is betting on subscription ecosystems rather than hardware sales. Their strategy explicitly anticipates a future where Xbox is a service, not a box. Sony invests heavily in exclusive blockbuster titles, God of War, Last of Us, Spider-Man, that justify dedicated hardware purchases. They're creating the moats through content that cannot be legally accessed somewhere else. But these defensive strategies face headwinds from the fundamental economics. Consoles are sold at or below cost, with profits coming from game sales and subscriptions. If the casual market migrates to mobile, console markets lose the volume that justifies manufacturing costs. The remaining hardcore market is smaller and likely unwilling to pay premium prices, reflecting to true hardware costs without stabilization. And I think that's illustrated to be true with the drop in the release of the Nintendo Switch 2. You know what I mean? I think they charge like $20 for a fucking tutorial, and with that. Platform gatekeeping delays the inevitable. Technical capability existed years ago. Why hasn't the transition happened faster? Because of platform gatekeeping. Apple's App Store policies deliberately restrict cloud gaming services. Until recently, Apple required each game in cloud services to be submitted individually for app review, making services like Xbox Cloud Gaming or GeForce Now essentially impossible. Apple's stated rationale was security and quality control, but the practical effect was protecting iPad and Apple TV gaming revenue streams. Revenue sharing requirements. Those make mobile gaming economies different from console economies. Apple and Google take 30% of in-app purchases, fundamentally changing the business model. Console games can charge $70 upfront. Mobile games must adopt free-to-play models with microtransactions, which platforms then tax heavily. Deliberate limitations on what mobile devices can access, protect other revenue streams. iOS restrictions on emulators, on competing app stores, and on system-level access all serve to control what software can run and how. These aren't technical limitations. They're policy choices designed to maintain platform power.